Yes! Come on! Yes! Yes!
I work all night, I work all day to pay the bills I have to pay.
What? 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 Contrary to everything I'm about to say, as you can see, I am a big Nintendo fan. Nintendo has appealed to multiple generations with their innovative pushing of technical limits and their sheer creativity when it comes to family fun. It is true that there are singular video games and video game companies that offer more ambitious and creative experiences when it comes to video games, but Nintendo has obviously been a household name for a reason. They keep making these beloved franchises that have appealed to young and old. With many franchises like the Mario franchise and the Kirby franchise, Pokemon franchise, which mostly don't have anything weighty in regards to narrative. There's something in it for young people in regards to the sheer vibrancy and the fun of it all, and older people can get into these kind of games for the nostalgia as well as the additional challenge. Of course, Nintendo has made some more narratively ambitious games like the Legend of Zelda series, Fire Emblem, Professor Layton, the Mario RPG games, and other exceptions. But when it comes to narrative ambition, you'd probably be seeking in other consoles like on PC with Steam or on the PlayStation consoles. Even so, Nintendo has managed to be beloved for their fun input for many generations. Whilst Nintendo probably were not the first people to come up with the idea of a video game, they certainly were responsible for increasing the popularity of video games during its conception era. And since then, Nintendo has offered a wide variety of fun experiences. And to this day, Nintendo remains the pioneers for entire genres of video games. The action-adventure genre is made popularized thanks to Nintendo's Legend of Zelda franchise. An entire genre of video games is named after one of their household names, Metroid, inventing the Metroidvania genre of video games. And then of course there's their flagship series, Super Mario, the flagship mascot platformer series, which has been a main appeal for many a generation. And then there's the spin-off series, Mario Kart. And Mario Kart 8 has sold so many physical copies on the Nintendo Switch that Mario Kart, as a spin-off franchise to Mario, has become as popular, if not more popular, than the mainline Super Mario franchise. Mario in various forms, whether it be in his mainline series and especially his Mario Kart series, has remained unanimously popular among so many people. And whilst Nintendo as a company has had their hiccups and their slip-ups throughout the years, their controversies are nowhere near as bad as what you would see from other video game companies. Like, for example, you can get angry at Nintendo for their greed, but it's nowhere near as bad as what the likes of EA has done over the years. You can criticize Nintendo for being out of touch with certain video game trends and only now catching up with certain facets of online gaming. But at least there's more respect for Nintendo than Activision Blizzard will ever have these days. And you can get angry at the Nintendo Switch 2 controversy all you like. That is nowhere near as overtly evil as Ubisoft overtly offending Japan multiple times in their promotion of Assassin's Creed Shadows. So, by all accounts, I have a lot of respect for Nintendo. I even got the t-shirt. But of course, on this occasion, I would encourage my viewers to close their wallets until further notice. Now I'm going to explain to you many things about the pricings of video games and what goes into them before explaining why the costs for the Nintendo Switch 2 games are completely ridiculous. What you need to know about video games are the various factors that go into their pricing. Their content, who it is that's making them, their technical innovation, how recent the games have been sold, but I'll explain it to you one at a time. The cost of a video game can depend on who it is that's making it. Is it a AAA gaming company? I.e., is it Nintendo, or Sony, or Valve, or Microsoft, so on and so forth? the big video game companies that get all the perks of marketing, merchandising, as well as the most technically feasible innovation when it comes to the highest quality video game experiences you can get on a technical feat. These kind of high budget video game companies are usually the ones that get a lot of attention, and in Nintendo's case, for good reason, due to their sheer quality and fun games. Then you have AA video game companies, which offer video games that are not as high a budget as the AAA gaming companies, but they can surprise you with how much they can do with comparatively so little. The first games that pop into my mind when it comes to AA games would be the Plague Tale series. Yes, the first game did show its limitations rather awkwardly, but the second game was very impressive for the budget of a AA title. Usually with AA games, people making AA games are significantly smaller than the AAA companies, but still have enough experience with how high quality video games work to give you a solid experience, to the point where some people who wouldn't know any better won't even realize the difference. And then there's indie video game companies, which can range from tens of people to literally one single person making a game. Nowadays, you'll find a lot of indie games being popularized in Steam. In fact, some indie video games have gotten so popular that they've managed to get re-releases on AAA video game consoles. Pretty impressive stuff. Suffice to say, you don't need to be a part of a AAA gaming company to make a difference when it comes to making an impactful video game. But in regards to pricing, you have to understand that the independent video game creators usually offer the cheapest prices, whereas AAA gaming companies usually have the more expensive prices, especially if a game is recent and trending. Keep that in mind. Another factor that goes into selling a video game is regarding what console it's being released on. So as of recording this, the PlayStation 5 and the first Nintendo Switch, as well as any high-performing gaming PC, are still very much in popular demand. So the most popular trending video games are going to appear on those kind of consoles. And if it's a game from a AAA company on the most recent technological hardware, then it's going to be at a fairly big price, because it's a high-quality game on a high-quality console. You starting to see the pattern? A good example of this would be Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I was recently browsing around town with the girl I love. No, I'm just kidding. And I've noticed that for the PlayStation 5 version, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is usually sold at £67.99. Now, keep in mind, I did notice that there were other games that were being sold from around 15 to about £40, which are still being sold on the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. In fact, Split Fiction can be sold for approximately £40, and it's made by EA of all people, one of the greediest gaming companies on the planet. Pretty impressively restrictive. So yes, you'll still get games that are recent and trending sold at around £40, which is the desired price for gamers to buy into. But just to state the facts, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is being sold at £67.99 because it's a recent AAA game sold for the highest possible console with the best technical hardware as of right now. And recently I've noticed that physical copies of the premium editions for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is being sold for about £89.99. Now, at first you're going to say that's shockingly expensive and no one in their right mind would want to buy it. I'd say it's a fairly understandable price, because with the premium edition, it's offering an additional downloadable content campaign on top of the already made story campaign from the base game. The signature edition of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle offers the additional DLC campaign called The Order of the Giants. So it's basically an additional story campaign on top of the already established story campaign. Not to mention the DLC also gives you the perks of having the Temple of Doom outfit. With the premium edition of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, you're essentially paying £20 more for having 2 games for the price of 1 bundle. So that makes sense. There's other factors that go into these games like accessibility, technical innovation, and so on and so forth. but I think I've told you enough to get the basic idea on where this is going. And you have to realize that the video game market is all about technical innovation. And these days, video game consoles are aspiring to give you the best possible screen quality possible. Why? Because when it comes to gaming, people would like to have smooth frame rates so that there's no lag input in regards to the games that they play, because if frame rates are lower, it leads to less enjoyable experiences where the game can't keep up with the player input. That's why you'll often see an insistence on higher quality frame rates and screen qualities, which usually increases the pricings. Keep that in mind. So when I was growing up, I grew up in the generation of people who would have the Nintendo Wii and the Nintendo DS. Before the Nintendo Switch came along, video games were usually restricted to two types of gaming experiences. The Nintendo Wii would offer the TV home console experience, where it wasn't a very mobile console, but it did offer the highest quality graphics and controller input for its time. And then there's the handheld consoles, which you can take anywhere you go, with lesser quality graphics, but still making use of what little hardware it has. And then the Wii U came along, which was a first start in having a little bit of both. The Wii U was basically a high-definition version of the Wii console, only this time, thanks to the Wii U tablet, you can play games when the TV was turned off. This is quite a unique concept for the time, but due to the fact that the Wii U sold comparatively lackluster games, the Wii U didn't sell as well as its predecessors. It seems that Nintendo's not the best at selling sequels, as we will evidently find out. So then the Nintendo Switch 1 came along, which basically pushed the Wii U concept even further, so that now, not only can you play TV console-worthy games as the TV was turned off, but you can literally take it wherever you go, just like a handheld console. This was mind-blowing at the time. What is essentially the equivalent of, say, a Wii or a Wii U game taken into the handheld concept with Nintendo DS. This was mind-blowing at the time. And to this day, it's quite an amazing technical feat. Now, of course, the Nintendo Switch 1 does have its shortcomings in regards to having lesser quality graphics than, say, the PlayStation 5, as well as some other technical limitations. But still, its impressive technical feats are still there and still impressive to this day. This console has had a very successful run with high-selling games like The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom, and especially Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the remaster of the game that came out 10 years ago for the Wii U. The reason why Mario Kart 8 was able to sustain itself for so long was mainly thanks to the fact that it's a fun game, as well as its input on downloadable content via the Booster Pack course, which I can happily say is one of the best downloadable content packs you'll ever come across. Again, keep that in mind for what we're about to discuss. So, in comes April 2025, and oh boy, what a crazy month it's been. There was some hype going into the Nintendo Switch 2, and by the time the Direct came along, people were rather excited to see what the Nintendo Switch 2 had to offer. It offered the same technical hardware of the Nintendo Switch 1, and promised even more. The controllers are even bigger, which would work well for my gargantuan hands. And the screen quality of the Nintendo Switch tablet would go from 720p to around 4K. An impressive achievement. The Nintendo Switch Direct 2 mainly used the latest Mario Kart game as the main promotion for the Nintendo Switch 2, and people were hyped and excited for all the various accessibilities, such as online access to Nintendo GameCube games, the promise of the recent Mario Kart game despite its perceived lackluster layout compared to Mario Kart 8. People were excited, but the one thing Nintendo did not reveal during the Direct was the ridiculously expensive prices for the games. And this is where the controversy comes in. Just how absolutely absurd these game prices are. You see, Mario Kart World is going to be sold for £74.99 on physical copies for the Nintendo Switch 2, which is a ridiculously absurd price for a base game. By comparison, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, one of the best-selling games ever made, is still being sold for £40.99 in game shops to this very day. That's a reasonable price as far as video games of that type are concerned. Now, Nintendo kept insisting that the price hikes have gone up because Mario Kart World is just that innovative. Although people have pointed out that Mario Kart is copying the formula of Forza Horizon, and the gameplay mechanics that Mario Kart has to offer are nothing new. The free roam thing, the photo mode, the traversing from one place to another, it's nothing new. It's just that it's being transported over to the Mario Kart formula, which is certainly an impressive concept for sure, but for £74.99, really? And something you need to consider, this is for the base game. I mentioned earlier that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle was being sold at £89.99 for its premium edition, whereas the base game for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is being sold for £67.99. In other words, you have to pay £20 more for the extra DLC. And then Mario Kart 8 is being sold for £40.99, and then you pay a wee bit more for the DLC if you want to. But Mario Kart World is being sold at £74.99 for the base game! Donkey Kong Bonanza is being sold at £64.99 or something like that, which is also ridiculously expensive. I mean, true, Donkey Kong Bonanza is being sold at approximately the same price as Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, true. And I understand it's being sold at the latest technological feats. I understand why the Nintendo Switch 2 console is being sold as expensive as it is. As far as I've been able to research, the Nintendo Switch 2, as it's currently being sold, is approximately around the same price as the PlayStation 5 was during its initial release. So having these expensive consoles is nothing new, but most games for the PlayStation 5 didn't insult their players with games of this ridiculous price hike. And it is true that you can get special editions for games of the PlayStation 5 for other ridiculously high prices, like with Tekken 8 or with Monster Hunter Wilds. When I went to a shop to purchase Monster Hunter Wilds for the PlayStation 5, I was able to get this for about £55 or so, a reasonable price for a recent game. And you can get special editions for this game at significantly higher prices, but the highest possible edition... I'm turning this Sean Connery. With the highest possible edition of this game being sold at around £90. Yes, I know, that is absolutely ridiculous, but people don't need to get that in order to enjoy the game. But Mario Kart World is essentially being sold at the price of the equivalent of a special edition for a game like this. All for a game that so far seems to have a lesser layout than its predecessor, Mario Kart 8. Oh my days. This is just outright greed at play. Outright greed. And when people found out about these prices, during the Nintendo Treehouse live streams, people kept spamming in the chat, in the live chat, drop the prices, 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 drop the prices. It got to the point where, suspiciously, during a recently Nintendo Switch 2 Direct premiere showing off the technical feats of Mario Kart World, the live chat was silenced. I wonder why. Now, people showed a lot of concerns regarding Mario Kart World, and to the game's credit, in some ways it was able to justify some previous concerns. People noticed that there were some racetracks that were just some straightaways that didn't really offer much. And people thought, why is that the case? This looks kind of boring. But fortunately, the recent Direct was able to answer that question. The reason for that is that not only are you going to get the usual quirky Mario Kart race courses, but in Mario Kart World, there's going to be some in-between races from Race 1 to Race 2, where you literally drive from one course to another. So now those concerned straightaways are actually technically justified, which makes a lot of sense, and that's a technical achievement, I would say. That's pretty impressive. Not to mention, Mario Kart World is promising 24 characters per race, the most amount of characters you can get in a Mario Kart game, and 24 characters in a race, that's pretty much the combined number of all the characters you can play as in Mario Kart Wii. All these technical feats are impressive, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, if Mario Kart World is being sold at this high a price for the base game, Mario Kart World had better. It had better deliver. Because if it doesn't, what was the point in boasting about the high price, huh? You have to keep in mind, Mario Kart World could be a fully completed game. It could very well be. But given the direction of Mario Kart 8, which was still sold at a reasonable price, especially with its DLC, you just know that no matter the promises of how much content there is in Mario Kart World, there is inevitably going to be downloadable content for Mario Kart World to pay a little bit more. And then months, years or so later, they're just gonna re-release it all in some package special edition for a somewhat cheaper price. Or a more expensive price. Because someone's pointed out that over in America, a game in the Nintendo Switch 2 could be $90 not for a special edition, so the special edition could be $120.
$90 physical, not a special edition. So special edition gonna be $100, $120.
And you have to take into consideration that the economic factors are even more ridiculous in other countries like Canada and Mexico, where you have to pay your life's wages just for a cup of coffee. Not that I'm a coffee drinker, but you get the idea. And to think, things have gotten even worse with their standards of physical editions. The reason why myself and others treasure physical copies of these games whenever possible, it's because not only is it our way of saying we own these games and these are trophies and treasures, but also digital games have the risk of being severely altered to the point of being the exact opposite of what they were on a technical feat, or just outright removed from digital stores. You could be saving up for this one game that you like digitally, only to have it removed from digital stores later on. It happened with the PT demo made by Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro. It can happen with many other games, like with that one Marvel Alliance 3 game, and with several other games. It's like the gaming equivalent of Netflix. One time a show you like will be on there, but the next moment, gone. Gone. Absolutely gone. Or if there's woke activists at play behind the scenes, content can be digitally altered to the detriment of the intended narrative of a said piece. So we treasure physical copies because once you have a physical copy, you've got it. Warts and all. You can enjoy it anytime. You just pop it in and play. Just look after your games, dust them well, just keep the discs and stuff like that intact. And you should be all well and good to preserve these games to treasure more sacred memories for the next generation. So now the Nintendo Switch 2 at first seems to be promising continuing physical media, unlike the PlayStation 5 Pro, but there's a controversy even for the physical copies made for Nintendo Switch 2, because there's this controversy regarding these download keycards that come with these cartridges. And to make a long story short, people are showing concern that these downloadable keys on these physical editions for Nintendo Switch 2 are ridiculous in the fact that the cartridges are pretty much download keys to the point where there's not even any point in having the physical copy. I've heard it said that you could pretty much photocopy the box art for Nintendo Switch 2 games, and it wouldn't make any difference in regards to you owning the physical copy.
It was perfect, but no, you just had to blow it up. You and your pride and your ego. You just had to be the man. If you'd done your job, known your place, we'd all be fine right now.
And like I said before, digital content can easily be severely altered at the detriment of the game, or outright removed altogether. So Of course, you have to take into consideration that it is still a Nintendo Switch type console, meaning that the game should, hypothetically, be available to play whether you're online or not. But then again, the download key could be downloading the actual game strictly onto the console itself to the point where you could play it with or without the cartridge, which is raising concerns about whether people actually own their games or not. And other people are raising the concern that if we don't own our games, then piracy is not stealing. Companies like Ubisoft, you know, the one that overtly insulted Japan with Assassin's Creed Shadows, has said that you will own nothing and you will be happy about it. So other people have lashed back on that because people want to own their games, but if they don't own their games, then their digital copies can be taken away or severely altered to their detriment at any given time. And people are responding back, well, if we don't own our games, then piracy isn't stealing because it's all open field. So you have to keep these contradictions in mind. I don't advocate for piracy. I'm just pointing out these contradictions. I'm the kind of guy who says, if there's a contradiction, I'm going to point it out. Now, people are going to say, oh, but Callum, people are going to flock to these games anyway, and prices are being increased with each generation. You're just going to have to say goodbye to games being sold at 40 to 50 pounds. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. As of recording this at the end of April 2025, Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which I will continue to live stream by the way, as well as the Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remaster have been sold for around £40 to £50 give or take, and have sold over 1 million copies to people worldwide. So games of that reasonable price of around £40 give or take are still not only profitable, but in high demand from players. It's impressive how AA games, as well as other games being sold recently, like Split Fiction and Clair Obscur Expedition 33 and other games of the like, can be sold at £40 and offer games that are more graphically impressive than a lot of AAA games these days. It shows that these high elite corporate types are pretty pathetic, aren't they? If this entire issue proves that if corporate elites want to keep up with the demands of their audience, they need to start thinking more like their audience and not like a monopoly cash cow. Yes, it is true and rather concerning that the Nintendo Switch 2 has already sold out in regards to pre-orders.
Distributors in the US like Walmart, Target, Best Buy, and GameStop are no longer allowing pre-orders, and Nintendo fans are erupting and expressing their dismay online.
But here's the thing, you don't have to buy the Nintendo Switch 2. You can wait several months from now, perhaps maybe even Christmas, or perhaps even longer than that, however long necessary, until the Nintendo Switch 2 inevitably gets cheaper, and especially their games. Something to note about this controversy is that the main source of the backlash isn't even with the console itself, because like I said before, the Nintendo Switch 2 is being sold at the same price as the PlayStation 5 did during its initial release. The main concern is about how ridiculously expensive the games are, on top of the console and on top of increasingly ridiculously priced accessories. Accessories based on features which Nintendo are only now catching up on. So what's the main takeaway from this entire video? We need to save our prices. And here's a major concern that people have established online. If we continue to support games that are ridiculously expensive on a financial basis, it could cause a shockwave to other AAA gaming companies to have the green light to also sell their games at ridiculously expensive prices, which is absolutely concerning because you have to take into consideration that as much as video gaming is a hobby, it doesn't need to be this ridiculously expensive when you consider all the other factors of life that we have to get accustomed to. Oh, but no. You don't need to sustain your well-being. You could just blindly purchase the most recently ridiculously expensive video game. Stuff your food, stuff your drink, stuff you need to pay your taxes, stuff you need to educate your children, stuff you need to look after your uncle's broken leg or something like that. stuff you need for charity, stuff you need to pay for electricity and gas and other repairs for your home, and stuff any input for your job, or stuff any other important investments that could come along with life. No. Just blindly purchase the most ridiculously expensive thing at the financial expense of everyone else. Man. So, as the phrase goes, vote with your wallets. You don't need to financially support ridiculously expensive games. Just enjoy physical copies of these games that come before and actually support other kinds of games. Now, of course, people can lash back in the comments, but Callum, you play games on Steam which are purely digital on PC by default. Yes, that is true. But here's the thing. You have to keep in mind that certain games are not altogether safe on Steam. Beloved games like Spec Ops: The Line have recently been removed from Steam. So it's not the absolute safe haven of video games, mind you. The thing is, I'm not against digital copies of games. I mean, people love Steam for a reason. It's just that people value physical copies of games as games that they can just pop in and play at any given time. But the Nintendo Switch 2's rendition of physical copies seems very counterintuitive of having this weird hodgepodge of digital and physical, which is not going over very well for people who have been buying these Nintendo games for generations. So, general gist, don't buy the Nintendo Switch 2, at least not yet. If and when it gets significantly cheaper, then I'd be more willing to purchase it. But until then, there is no way I am going to financially support something this ridiculously expensive, especially when there's other things that are far worth my time and value, i.e., financially supporting entertainment that's well worth my time. So, what do you all think of this controversy regarding the Nintendo Switch 2? Let me know in the comments down below for your input. I would love to have a conversation going, and if there's anything that I've missed, feel free to point it up, or if there's anything that you could elaborate better than I did in this video, I would love to read it. In the meantime, ScotsThinker signing out.
I don't think we're in much shape to do anything about it.
Well, what do we do?
Why don't we just wait here for a little while? See what happens.
Wait!
One more thing.
One thing I forgot to mention during this video is the fact that Reggie, the Nintendo CEO from America, insisted on having Wii Sports be made for free on Nintendo Wii consoles, and he had to fight tooth and nail for that. Reggie is still one of the most beloved CEOs in gaming history, to the point where people like myself wonder why he even left in the first place. And recently on social media, he's been sharing the story of how he put Wii Sports in for free, and people have picked this up as a somewhat subtle yet simultaneously overt critique on the Nintendo Switch 2 marketing, especially when you have to consider that a demo game for the Nintendo Switch 2 is being sold for about $10. A demo!